excellent. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulina Muhammadin Ameen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So, good to see you all, inshallah. So this is part two. I don't know how many of you were perhaps here for the first one, but it's good to see you. So we're on part two now. So part one, we talked about the rise of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. And today we want to talk about the end of his Khilafah and then the Khilafah of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Okay, so we'll just move on to the next one. So just to remind you, just in case if anyone wasn't here last week, we have a prize that whoever maybe does the best kind of interaction on chat or in voice, you can win a free copy of Imam al-Suyuti rahimahullah's Tariq al-Khulafa, and this is referring to the Ummayyad Caliphs. So it's a book about it. So I think it's best that you're registered as well, because if you're not registered with Seeker Academy, I mean, it's difficult for me just to be able to send it to Monlan Musan just to get your details to send it to you. So if you do win, please just make sure you're registered. Okay, let's keep going. So this is the structure for today. It's a bit more chunky actually than last week. So we'll try and go through it as quick as we can, but take our time as well. So just a few credits. We'll do a quick recap. Not everything, just kind of where we left off. Then we'll talk about the death of Hassan radiallahu anhu, the rise of Yazid I. Sorry, that should be the way around. It should be the death of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, then the rise of Yazid I. Then we'll talk about Karbala. We'll talk about Hadra, which is less well known than Karbala, but arguably kind of worse than what happened. But I'll leave that to your opinion when we get there. We'll talk about the siege of Makkah, and we'll talk about the death of Yazid I and Muawiyah II. I do have the chat up, so if at any time you can't see me or my voice is unclear or I'm cutting off, please just let me know, okay? I do have the chat there. Okay. So just some credits. So some slides here have been taken from one of my teachers of history. He runs the history channel History and he's currently running two courses currently, the Umayyad history and the history of the 20th century. And you can get access to them for £10 a month through Patreon. So if you just sign up through Patreon of the channel, which I'll show you, you can get access to both of these. We're about, what we in now, January, February, March, April, May. So we're about almost half the way through. But they're all recorded, so you can go back and watch them if you would like. And this is the channel. So if you just go here and then click on these 5 more links and go to Patreon, if you'd like to join there, it's all there, because most of these slides are from Ustad's slides as well, and he's kindly allowed us to use them. Okay, so just before we get into it again, I put this last time, and I just want to put it in here today, that don't have any baggage in your mind about the Umayyads. Okay, try and be as fair as you can. Don't judge them too quickly. This session specifically is going to be very controversial. More controversial than last week for anyone who was there last week. If you thought that was controversial, it's going to get more controversial. So please don't kind of think that this is, something which is really easy to talk about. But Umayyad history is quite difficult to talk about. And please don't get offended. History is the worst thing to study if you want to get offended, because things happen which, are quite distasteful. So, yeah. Okay, let's move on then, inshallah. So, I wanted just to remind you of where we were last time. So, in the year 671 AD, okay, that is when that's where we left off. Just to remind you of what happened, if I just get this pen out here, okay. Oh, and yeah, just a quick one as well. If you have questions at any time, just jump in, okay. We don't need to ask me or anything like that. Just jump in, because I really like it when we have discussions. So if you have any questions at any time, please jump in. So, we talked about in 661 AD how Ali radiallahu anhu was assassinated in Kufa. Kufa is roughly around here, it's in Iraq. Okay, so Ali radiallahu anhu was assassinated there. Then we said in that same year, Hassan radiallahu anhu made a treaty with Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu then was given the Khilafah by Hassan radiallahu anhu with the condition. Does anyone know? I just want to make this interactive because I don't like it if I'm talking too much. Does anyone know what the condition was when Hassan radiallahu anhu made the treaty with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Bit in chart, you can say out loud. Maybe really works. Any idea? May just be easy to say it, actually, if anyone wants to get involved. No, it's okay. So the condition which he did was that Hassan radiallahu said to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu that when we have this treaty with each other, okay, that when you pass away, I will get the Khilafah after you. Okay, so Hassan radiallahu anhu made this deal with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu that when you pass away, Muawiyah, I will get the Khilafah back. It will come back to Banu Hashim. It's really important to bear that in mind. Okay, so that's kind of where we've left it. And now the year, so Muawiyah radiallahu anhu's rule starts at 661. He becomes the Caliph in 661. Follow me? And now we've gone all the way into 671, where things are about to get very interesting very quickly. Okay. Right, I wanted to introduce you all to a term, okay, which is quite interesting. Okay, it's called realpolitik. And I want you to look at the definition. The realpolitik is a system of politics or principles based on practical rather than moral or ideological considerations. Okay, so what that means is this is the way how Islamic empires have run since the beginning of history. Okay, this is how things have run. We try to romanticize our history in a bit in terms of we think that because people were Muslims, sometimes we think that everything was based on the Quran and the Sunnah. That's just not true in any way whatsoever, especially when you come to the Umayyads. Things go downhill in that aspect very, very quickly. And this is very important to remember because this is how people operate. They operate that we want to, before anything, okay, the most important thing that we want is to stay in power. Then our religion and our religious rules come second to that. So it's important to just kind of remember that. Can anyone remember? Does anyone know? I'll just ask the question again because I don't know how many people here from last week. There was one. There's a guy, part of the Umayyad household, and what he did is when he would get up on the minbar when the Umayyads were in power, he was called Marwan. Does anyone know what he used to do in Medina when he used to get onto the pulpit for the Jum'ah khutbah on the Friday? Does anyone know what he used to do? You can put it in the chat or just say it out loud. For Marwan, when he used to get up on the khutbah on a Friday in Medina, he used to do something. Can anyone remember? Let's have a guess.
Curse the Sayyids.
Sorry, say that again, brother.
Curse the Hashimi.
Yeah, he used to. Did you say curse?
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to. Can you believe that? He used to get up and he used to curse the Banu Hashim. Yeah. He would get up on the Friday, the Jum'ah. Look, we all go to the Jum'ah and we hear this wonderful Arabic of, praising Allah and His Messenger. We hear all these wonderful things about Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the Khulafa al-Rashidun. This guy used to get up and he used to curse Banu Hashim from there because he didn't work on maybe how we see things of everything should be based on the Quran and the Sunnah. We do everything properly. He works on realpolitik. That I'm from Banu Umayyah. These people from Banu Hashim. We were fighting each other for such a long time. I want to stay in power and keep Banu Hashim down, even though it's the clan of the Messenger of Allah. Sorry, not real politics. So not real politics. It's called realpolitik. I don't know where the word actually comes from. I don't know the etymology of it, but it's this word on the screen, realpolitik, and that means a system politics. It's basically being practical in life rather than being moral, as we would do. So I just want you to keep this in mind that this is how people operated, especially Muslims, because then what comes next is not going to shock you maybe too much. Okay, let's keep going. So this is a timeline of events. I'm not going to bore you by reading through it because I don't think that's the best way to teach things. I'm just letting you know that we're going to go to here. Okay, the death of Yazid. We're not going past it here. Things happen. It gets very, very quickly still to past Yazid, but we're not going to go to that. We're just going to go up to the death of Yazid. And this is all just here because if you want the PowerPoint after, it's just there for you to be able to see the dates. Okay, let's keep going. Right. So this man I've mentioned, we've just mentioned him, but I'm going to keep mentioning him because he's quite an interesting man. Okay. So he's called Marwan I. Okay. So Marwan ibn Al-Hakam. So as you can see from it, he actually becomes the Caliph. Okay. Now, the reason why he's important will become more evident later on, but I want you just to bear him in mind because he is the epitome. He kind of is the the epitome, the kind of living interpretation of realpolitik. I'll just put RP. Okay. This man was just the ultimate pragmatic man. And if you look, he's related to Uthman radiallahu anhu, he's related to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. But this man would just do anything that he needed to get into power. And I just want you to bear that in mind, that that's how people used to think. Okay, so if we go back to the history then, we said that Hassan radiallahu anhu had given the Khilafah back to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Okay. Now, what happens is in 6-7, so just I'll just put these numbers on just so we're all orientated again. So we said in 661, this is all AD, yeah? Just keep it like a bit more simple. We said Muawiyah radiallahu anhu came into power and he gets the agreement with Hassan radiallahu anhu that when I pass away, the Khilafah will go back to you. Now we go to the year 671 AD and something monumental happens. Does anyone know what happens in 671? In 671 AD, does anyone know what monumental event happens? Someone dies. Does anyone know who dies? Not quite, actually, Brother Race. That's a good guess. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu doesn't die in 671, but Jazakallah for trying. I appreciate it. Okay, let's move on. Okay. So, I'll read this with you. Ibn Abi Shayba, rahimahullah, reported from Umayr ibn Ishaq. A man and I entered upon Hassan ibn Ali, so Al-Hassan radiallahu anhu, visiting him when he was ill, and he said to that man, ask me before you can no longer ask me anymore. He said, there is nothing to ask, may Allah heal you. He, Umar, said, he then went through a partition, then came out and said, I did not come out until I vomited a piece of my liver. This is Hassan radiallahu anhu talking. Until I vomited a piece of my liver, which I began to flip over with a stick. So he's literally just there, like being able to turn this back and forth. But I have been poisoned several times, and this is the worst time. This is Hassan radiallahu anhu speaking. Umar said, he came to him the next day while he was at the marketplace, and Al-Hussein was by his head. He said, Al-Hussein radiallahu said, oh, brother of mine, tell me who did this, because Hassan and Hussein are brothers, yeah. Hassan replied, do you want to kill him? Hussein radiallahu anhu said, yes. Hassan radiallahu anhu said, if it is who I think it is, this is so powerful, this, then Allah's vengeance is harsher than yours. And if that person is innocent, then I do not wish an innocent person to be killed because of me. And you can see the source there. So this is not something which is just, I've just made up just to add intrigue. This is a real thing. Any impressions from that, just before we talk about it? Because I know this it's going to be quite difficult to process sometimes. Anyone got any impressions, anything they want to say, comment about that? Okay, I wanted to kind of just ask you guys a few questions. You can put it in the chat, I think, if you want. But if you want to talk, I appreciate that because it just makes it easier and more flowing. You know, here, it's a quite interesting statement from Hassan radiallahu anhu. There's two things which are quite interesting, the two sentences, I think. One is this one. I've been poisoned several times, and this is the worst time. So in this report, Hassan radiallahu anhu is saying, I've been poisoned many times over. But this one, he's saying, so what Hassan radiallahu anhu is saying, this one I think has got me. It's taken me. Yeah. So it's really, really interesting that. And then I think the other thing here, which is quite interesting, is this one, last one. If it is who I think it is, Allah's vengeance is harsher than yours. But if the person is innocent, I do not wish an innocent person to be killed because of me. This comes back to what I kind of talked about. We talked about last week that the Ali radiallahu anh, Hassan radiallahu anh, they just had hearts of gold. I can't. It doesn't make you a Shia to say that. Okay, this is not a controversial statement. They just had hearts of gold. They were just wonderful, wonderful people, and they just loved the Ummah so much. It's just a shame, I think, that they weren't able to rule for longer. Yeah, that they weren't able to rule, especially Hassan radiallahu anh. Just hearts of gold, honestly. Yeah, just look at, like, someone's killed you, right? And your brother's saying, "Look, I'll get revenge for you. I'll do this." The caliphate's been taken away from you, right? If you're Hassan radiallahu anh, you're going to die. The caliphate's taken away from you. He still wants to protect the dignity of the Ummah, of the Muslims. So I just think that's incredible. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Something very interesting is coming in. When we read this, this is a report from the Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba over 1,000 years ago. So sometimes what we do is we look at history and we don't want to go too much into it, right? So we say, "Oh, Hassan radiallahu anhu got poisoned. Let's let's leave it there. Let's not dig any deeper." The reason why I think that's not going to work today, but it may have worked previously in terms of not needing to go into it deeper, but it's not going to work today because we have this globalized world through the internet. Everyone is looking into everything. And we as Muslims, I think, need to get ahead of the game now. This is a very interesting paper. Someone has done a paper, and you can just go on Google and type this up, the poisoning of Hassan radiallahu anh, has written a paper of how Hassan radiallahu anh died, analyzing what the material was and who did it. Really, really interesting. So I'll just highlight a few important things here. So they say, okay, that a mineral called calomel was what may have caused it, okay, and that it can be mistaken for gold fillings because it can be yellow, okay. And so when they do all of this, they look into all of the narrations about it. They say, in light of several historical sources, it points out Hassan's wife, Ja'da, as the prime suspect, which we know was a wife by Hassan. Okay? So they've looked into the medical conditions of it, they've looked at what the symptoms and all that, and they've seen what could cause it, what was likely at the time. Not only have they done that, I want you to come to here, read from here. A considerable number of calomel-containing mercury mines exist in present-day Western Turkey, which was in the heart of the Byzantine Empire, i.e. Roman Empire, around the time of Hassan's death. The Caliph sought to nominate his own son as his successor. Okay, so after this, it goes into them saying that it could be Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. I don't want to go into that. That's not the discussion of who actually poisoned him. You're never going to be able to prove that. Okay. But what my point is look, they've actually managed to, by evidence, to tell you where the poisoning of Hassan radiallahu anhu, where the material came from, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Okay? That it was in the Roman Empire. So then the discussion could then go about, well, who would have access to the Roman Empire? But that's just, I think, conjecture now. That's us just talking about things which I think you're never going to be able to prove of who actually managed to get it. But it's very interesting. It's an interesting paper. Go read it if you have time. Just literally go on Google and type in the poison paper on the poisoning of Hassan's death or the alarm, and this will come up. So this proved they didn't prove, they think it's calomel, which is like a mercury kind of derivative, and they believe that you can find those mines in the Western Turkey, which is where the Roman Empire was. I think that's very, very fascinating, and it's something which we shouldn't step away from, because we need to reclaim our history and own it. Because if we own it, then we can talk about it confidently, and we don't feel scared and shy and awkward about anything. So yeah, if there's any questions, please do stop me. Okay. just give you like 30 seconds in case anyone's got any questions. Okay, I think we're okay. But you just put it in the chat at any time if you like, and then I'll always just touch upon it. Right. So the year, carry on with our story, right? Because I like to tell history more as a story, as a narrative. So we're in the year 671. Hassan radiallahu, we go back to Muawiyah radiallahu, yeah, with the capital in Damascus. Hassan radiallahu has just passed away. Okay. Now what happens is a bit dicey. I'm just going to tell you the facts. I'm not giving an opinion, okay? Because it's still Muawiyah radiallahu, it's a companion. I'm not trying to paint him in a bad light. I'm just telling you what happened, okay? Hassan radiallahu passes away, and the same year, or just a bit later on, Muawiyah radiallahu then sends his son, okay, called Yazid, on a siege of Constantinople. Constantinople is where Istanbul is today. Okay, this is Constantinople. He sends him on a siege of it, and he puts him as the leader of the siege. And in that army are people like Abdullah bin Abbas, Abdullah bin Umar. There's a pretty senior people in this army, by the way. So he sends him on a siege of it. However, the siege doesn't work out. Logistics. Constantinople has these thick kind of Theodosian walls. They're very thick walls, very difficult to take. They just don't have the technology, I think, to be honest, to take it down. So he fails in that. Okay. So Yazid comes back, okay, and Muawiyah radiallahu anh, after giving him military command, and he fails at that, then says to him, I want you to go, and I want you to lead the Hajj. So he turns him on the conquest to Constantinople, and then he makes him the leader of the Hajj the very next year. Does anyone know, can anyone think, why is Muawiyah radiallahu anh doing that? Why is he giving him command of Constantinople? Why is he giving him a military command and then making him the leader of Hajj? It's two really random things. Like, they're not connected to each other, are they? But why would he be doing that? Does anyone know? And if you want to have a guess, by all means, just take a guess. It doesn't matter if you're on. We're all here to learn, to be honest. I may learn something from you guys also, to be honest. Any ideas? You can just shout it out as well if you want. So it's easier. No. Any idea at all? Okay. If you don't. Okay. So the reason why he does it is because of this. The Caliph at that time, even during the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidun as well, okay? But the Caliph at the time would have to have military experience, okay? And they would also, whoever was the Caliph, would lead the Hajj. Example, during the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidun, the Caliphs would lead the Hajj, okay? And going on a military expedition, okay, is also a sign of you being the leader. Sometimes the caliphs would go on military expeditions. So what Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is doing, okay, is prepping Yazid for the leadership in 671 AD by giving him military experience, which every caliph should have. And then he's also giving him the position which the leader would usually have, which is leading the Hajj, like how the Khulafa al-Rashidun would always try to lead the Hajj. Okay, so that's that. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please just let me know. Okay, that's why Muawiyah radiallahu anh has given Yazid that. It's military experience because everyone needs that to be accepted, and he's made him the leader of the Hajj after that to give him that position of what the Caliph would usually have. So we know that he's done that, then we kind of know maybe what's coming next. So what happens is in that year, Muawiyah radiallahu anh comes to Medina. Okay, I'll just draw this on. So Muawiyah radiallahu anh, if I just put this in blue actually, just to make it different, he comes to Medina. Okay, Muawiyah radiallahu anh, and he does something very, very interesting. Okay, very interesting. So he comes to Medina and he comes to the senior people of Medina. Right? And Muawiyah radiallahu anhu comes to them and he says something interesting. But just before we go through it, I'll just talk through these senior people, okay? So Sa'id ibn Uthman, he is the son of Uthman ibn Affan, okay? He's the son of the Caliph, the third Caliph. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, I'm sure we're aware, is the senior kind of hadith narrator. Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr is the son of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Okay, he is like a very pious and good man, different to his brother Muhammad who killed Uthman. You have Abdullah ibn Hanzala al-Ghasil. Hanzala radiallahu anhu is a famous companion. That's his son, Abdullah. I'm sure we're aware of Hussein ibn Ali. We have Abdullah ibn Abbas, who I'm sure we're aware of. We have Abdullah ibn Zubair, who I'm sure we're aware of, the son of Zubair ibn Awwam radiallahu anhu. Anas ibn Malik, I'm sure we're aware of, the Khadim of the Messenger of Allah, who's the servant of the Messenger of Allah. We have Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Abu Umar ibn Khattab. And we have Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Okay? He's not our discussion, but a very fascinating man. He actually is going to become the Caliph later. And as you can see, he's actually the son of Marwan ibn Al-Hakam. Yeah? He's actually the son, yeah, of Marwan ibn Al-Hakam. Okay? His son, though, Abdul Malik, was a very, very pious man. Okay? Things change later with him. He's not a discussion, unfortunately, because he's not part of the Sufyanids. He's a very interesting man. Okay? Does anyone know in the chat what did Abdul Malik ibn Marwan build? Just put it in the chat if you know. What did Abdul Malik ibn Marwan build? Okay. So I hope we're all happy with the men of Medina. So I want you all just in the chat if you can. I know there's about 5 people in there. If you could, I'd appreciate it. What happens is Muawiyah radiallahu anhu comes to these guys, okay, these senior companions, radiallahu anhum, okay, or senior tabi'in, and he says, I want you to pledge allegiance to my son. Okay? There's a whole host of reasons why he does this. Okay. If you're interested, you can ask maybe at the end. But he asks them that I want you to pledge allegiance to Yazid now, and then when I pass away, he will take over. Okay. Can I have in the chat? So A means you reject it, and B means, that you would pledge allegiance. Can I have a chat in the chat, an A or a B? What would you do at this point? Do you reject it or would you pledge? Because I don't think there's a right answer at this point. So I'm just interested to see what you guys would think. Let's just get the chat up. I just put an A or B in the chat. Would you reject allegiance? Can I ask Brother Race why? Like if you can do it on chat, that'd be great. But if not, you can just type it in. Why would you reject it?
I'll try to speak. Can you hear me, Brother Yahya?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you, mashallah. Firstly, lovely presentation going on. Very knowledgeable.
Nice to meet you, Said. How you doing? Okay.
Alhamdulillah, good, thank you. Yeah, no, mashallah, very good presentation, very enlightening. And sometimes the screen is just playing a bit funny, but I think that's just on my part. But I'm otherwise able to hear everything. Mashallah, very good. I think it's you mentioned there's no right or wrong answer here, bro. But I think there's a very clear answer because what Imam Hussein said to Marwan ibn Al-Hakam and Walid bin Uqba was there as well, that pledge allegiance to Yazid. This was, I think, maybe just straight after Muawiyah had passed away.
Yes.
And Imam Hussein al-Islam said very famous words. He said, someone like me cannot give bay'ah to someone like him.
Yeah.
So it's very clear, man. Rasulullah said clearly, follow me and the Quran and the Sunnah. Inni tarikum fikum al-thaqalain. Kitabullahi wa itrati ahla bayti. Very simple. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, various other Imams who came later on, they were open about it. But obviously, it's mashallah history lesson, and we'll take it from there. Lovely lecture going on. Thank you so much again.
No, absolutely, and it's absolutely fine. Like that, absolutely. Say like this is me and Said, by the way, went to the same university. I was wondering why we're so familiar. That's why. But absolutely, Absolutely. I totally get what you're saying, and it's not that. And absolutely, there's people backing Sayyid up as well. Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu and Abdullah ibn Zubair both did the same thing. Yeah, they both rejected it. Okay, Abdullah bin Umar and Abdullah bin Abbas pledged it. Okay, so they actually gave the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, and it's very interesting actually why they did that, but we will come back to that in a second. That's fine. I know we can divide opinion this, so let's move on for a second. Yeah. So actually, just before we go on to that, what Abdullah bin Zubair says to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is very interesting. He says actually to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he says, he rejects it, right? But he says something very interesting. He says, Muawiyah, if you want us to give pledge allegiance to your son, he goes, I'm happy to do that. He says, you need to step down first. Okay? So he actually makes a good point. He says, like I think, which Said was alluding to as well, in terms of this is not right, that the Prophet ﷺ did not allow us to give pledge of allegiance as well to two people at the same time. He says, if you want me to pledge allegiance to your son, I'll contemplate it and I may give it, but you have to step down first. Okay? So that's what Abdullah bin Zubair says. Abdullah bin Umar and Abdullah bin Abbas give pledge of allegiance for a different reason, which we will come to why they do that. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu has a very famous quote. He says, "Oh Allah, safeguard me from the 60th year, that's after Hijrah, and from the rule of the young man." And he radiallahu anhu died in 59 AH because something very interesting is going to happen in the 60th year. It's just quite an interesting quote. Okay. Then in the year 60 AH, okay, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu passes away. Okay, so he dies, and after he passes away, so he dies of natural causes from what's in the books of history. Yeah, so after he passes away, okay, Yazid is going to come to the forefront, right? And what does he have to do? Yazid is he has to get the pledge of allegiance from everyone now, right? So his father's passed away, and now he needs to get the pledge of allegiance from everyone. Okay, now. He gets it from a lot of people, but the main thing which he's worried about is the people in Medina. Okay, the main people in Medina, because that's where the source of power is. Right. So in Medina, there's a consultation going on. Abdullah bin Zubair is there, Abdullah bin Abbas is there, Sa'id ibn Uthman is there, Hussein radiallahu anhu is there, and Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhum, may Allah be pleased with them all, is there. Now, they have a consultation, they talk about it. They differ. Okay. Abdullah bin Zubair, so I'll put them in one, I'll just put them in red. It's red, yeah. Abdullah bin Zubair, Hussein radiallahu anhuma, both say we're not going to do it. Okay. I put it in green now. Abdullah bin Abbas and Abdullah bin Umar, okay, both say we're going to pledge allegiance to Yazid. Okay, Sa'id ibn Uthman is also going to do it as well. He kind of took a position with the government a bit of a time ago. Okay, so he's given it as well. Right, I want to talk a bit about, just very briefly mention about Abdullah bin Umar because he's a very interesting man here. He says, I've heard from the Prophet ﷺ that on the day of judgment, every traitor will be given a painful chastisement. And it is for this very reason I have given allegiance to Yazid. And this allegiance has the approval of Allah and the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. And in my view, nothing is greater than the fact that one should pledge allegiance on the command of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ and then go back on his word. And I do not find any justification for refusing to give allegiance. Obedience of that Imam is obligatory on whom consensus has taken place, and refusal to give allegiance on the basis of transgression is not allowed. So that's how Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu thought. Okay, we're not here to get into the polemics of it. Okay, I don't want to get into polemics of whether he was right, whether he was wrong. What I want maybe all of us just to appreciate is it was a difficult moment in time. Okay, where even the senior Sahaba are differing of what to do. Abdullah bin Umar is very interesting in this time. He actually tells all of his family to give the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, and he actually there's a narration where he says to his family, if you don't give the Pledge of Allegiance, then like you're not from me. basically saying that, I'm not going to allow you into this family. Now, at this moment in time, that seems quite controversial, okay? And it seems like because we kind of know a bit about Yazid and how he was, we maybe see it as someone kind of giving into the rulership. However, what I want you to bear in mind, because I think we need to be a bit mature about this, is Abdullah ibn Umar is a senior man at this point. He's a bit elderly at this point. He's not stupid. He's spent a lot of time with the Prophet ﷺ as well. There's a reason why he's doing this. I don't want anyone to maybe to have the opinion and think that Abdullah ibn Umar thinks Yazid is the best guy for the job. No one thought that. Okay, I don't think you'll find any kind of narration from any senior companion that they thought Yazid was the best man. However, Abdullah ibn Umar is doing this because he knows that things can go wrong very quickly if you don't, when you go up against the leader. That's how he rationalized it. If you disagree with him, that's up to you, that's fine. But I'm saying that's just how he viewed it. Okay. Okay. So when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is alive, yeah, you could either pledge allegiance or reject the allegiance. Then when the caliphate of Yazid comes, it's about affirming it or rejecting it. Okay. So Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu and Abdullah ibn Zubair, they still reject it. Okay, so they stay with number 2. They go from A to 2, and they still reject the allegiance to Yazid. Sorry. And Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Abbas stay with the pledge of allegiance to Yazid. Okay, they gave it to him before. They said, "Yeah, we'll pledge allegiance to him," and they still stay with it. So that's where we're at in 60 AH. So roughly around 681 AD, okay, or 680 AD. This is what we're at now. Okay, that 2 people, okay, have not given it. Okay, right. Things get more interesting as we go along. So what happens is, Saeed referred to it before very correctly. In Medina, Marwan is still there. Okay, and what Marwan did is, this guy, I don't understand. And on the Day of Judgment, everyone gets their comeuppance. He has a hatred for some reason of Banu Hashim. So what he does is with Hussein radiallahu anhu specifically, when he comes into when the Pledge of Allegiance is needed to be taken from people in Medina, Hussein radiallahu anhu is called by the governor. Marwan is not the governor at this point. He's actually been removed. But he's still there. Okay? And he comes in, Hussein radiallahu anhu, and the governor asks him, he says, can you give the Pledge of Allegiance? And what Hussein radiallahu anhu does very cleverly is he tries to buy time. So he says to him, look, I'll give the Pledge of Allegiance, but let's do it in like a public display. Let me say it in front of everyone because it's such a momentous occasion. And Marwan, I mean, he's got a brain maybe as well, and he kind of was governor and he's been in politics. He says to Hussein, you're lying. I know you're not going to do it. He says to the governor that, don't let him go, imprison him. Don't let him go because he's going to trick you. But the governor is a bit more soft-hearted, and he says, "No, I'm not going to do that to him." So Marwan's still involved. He's just always there as a guy who is fanatical about Banu Umayyah, and you'll see how much he becomes fanatical. It actually takes him to the top, actually, at the end. So Hussein radiallahu anhu and Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu both flee from Medina. Okay, they flee from Medina and they go down to Mecca. Okay, during the night they make their escape. So there's just a narration here. Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk about Hussein radiallahu anhu first, what happens with him, and then we'll talk about Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So on Monday, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, in the 60th year after the Hijrah, Hussein radiallahu anhu performed his final Umrah while bidding farewell to the people of Mecca, where he had spent approximately 4 months in residence. So after he left from Medina, he went to Mecca, and for 4 months he was there. Whilst he was there, he got letters from the people of Iraq, okay, telling Hussein radiallahu anhu that we will give you support, okay, and we will give you an army, and we will support you against Yazid. Okay, so Hussein radiallahu anhu gets these reports, yeah, and he thinks to himself, "This is my chance." Okay, that Iraq will support me, and Iraq will give me the ability to take power and get the caliphate, which I'm worthy of. So he circumambulated the sacred house, the Kaaba, 7 times, and walked between Safa and Marwa before finally trimming his hair as per the rituals of the Umrah. After his Umrah, Al-Hussein departed from Mecca and headed towards Kufa, accompanied by his children, his wives, and approximately 60 to 70 of his loyal supporters. So it's not an army he has. It's literally just a traveling group, to be honest. This is important to remember. However, what happens is Yazid gets wind of this, okay, and he sends an army, okay, to deal with it, because he obviously doesn't want Hussein radiallahu anhu rebelling against him. Now, Hussein radiallahu anhu is going towards Iraq, and he gets to a place called Karbala. Okay, so let me just write this in. So he gets to a place called Karbala. Okay, I'm sure we've all heard of it. Okay, and as you can see here, there's a river here which runs alongside it. What happens is the army of Yazid surrounds. Okay, you can see that the surroundings. So this is Hussein radiallahu anhu's camp here in green here. They surround his camp, okay, and they cut off his water supply. As you can see, this is Iraq. It's a very, very hot place. Okay, so Hussein radiallahu anhu is starting to get thirsty, starving, and things like this. And I'm not going to go into too much about Karbala, because it's such a there's a lot to it. There's a lot of aspects to it. But what happens is, in short, is there's a commander under the Umayyads. It's called Umar ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. So the very famous companion Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, one of the 10 guaranteed Jannah. His son, unfortunately, is here surrounding Yazid. Is here surrounding Hussein radiallahu anhu. Now, what he does is he surrounds Hussein radiallahu anhu, and what Yazid tells him, this is one narrative story, is Yazid tells his commanders, I want you to bring him to Damascus and get the Pledge of Allegiance off him. That's one version of, and kind of what I think may have been the most likely scenario of what he told him. But Allah knows best, I could be wrong, okay? And what happens is, Umar ibn Sa'd, okay, has surrounded Yazid. Okay? He's surrounded him. And originally, when they send letters to Hussein and tell him to pledge the allegiance, he doesn't give it. But when Hussein radiallahu anhu is surrounded, okay, he then says to Umar ibn Sa'd that I will give the Pledge of Allegiance to Yazid. At this point, what should have happened is Umar ibn Sa'd should have stopped. He should have treated Hussein radiallahu anhu with total magnanimous respect that he deserves, being the blood of the Prophet ﷺ, and should have offered him his own seat and taken him to Damascus. Okay. However, for reasons which are really unclear, unfortunately, we don't know whether Yazid told him to do this. We don't know whether he did it of his own accord. You can argue either way. Umar ibn Sa'd rejects it on the 10th of Muharram. Sorry, the 10th of Muharram. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Umar ibn Sa'd attacks overwhelmingly. It's not even a battle. It's just a massacre, unfortunately. Yeah. He attacks Hussein radiallahu anhu and he kills almost everyone there. Right? There's reports of even young children and babies, newborns dying, unfortunately. It's just a revolting and disgusting moment of Islamic history, unfortunately. And Hussein radiallahu anhu is killed in the Battle of Karbala as well. And his head, his blessed head, is severed from his body and sent on a platter like a plate to Yazid ibn Muawiyah. So it's a very difficult time. It's a difficult thing to talk about. But unfortunately, that's what happens at Karbala, that Hussein radiallahu anhu is martyred. Okay. So this is my point when I would just discuss to you at the beginning of this word here. Realpolitik. Okay. This is how the Umayyads operated. This is how Muslims operated. Yeah? Realpolitik. They didn't care about the narrations in the hadith books of, Bukhari, Muslim, all the hadith books you'll find of the virtues of Hussein radiallahu anhu. it didn't mention that Ahlul Bayt is mentioned in the Quran. They didn't care about the hadith of the Quran and the Sunnah and Ahlul Bayt and how important they are. It's realpolitik how these people work. They said this guy, radiyallahu an, is a threat to our power. We need to get rid of him. That's how they worked, unfortunately. Any questions about that? Any comments which anyone wants to make? Because I know I don't want it just to be an echo chamber as well. I do want you to be able to kind of challenge me. Because absolutely, it's not an echo chamber here. It's okay. I know this is sorry, go on.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Yahya. You were about to say something.
No, you were going to say something. Go on. I was just going to move on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, man. Just a quick comment. Yeah, mashallah. Very nice depiction. This is the first time I'm seeing this actually, and it just sheds light very briefly as to what it may have been like. It's very nice. Just a comment about who was responsible, because this is a big debate going on, isn't it, about the murder, the massacre of Imam Hussein, and whether it was Umar ibn Sa'd or Yazid or Ibn Ziyad, because Umar ibn Sa'd was a commander, obviously, of the army sent by Ibn Ziyad in Kufa. The thing is, if it wasn't Yazid, then why were the heads and the women paraded in Sham, all the way into Sham and before Yazid? Ultimately, the question needs to be asked: who is responsible? And would Umar ibn Sa'd have gone to that extent if he misunderstood Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when Imam Hussein apparently offered allegiance to Yazid, which is not like Hussein. Hussein made his head cut. If you think about it, he had his head cut and said, I won't give bay'ah to him. So Imam Hussein Islam never offered any allegiance to Yazid. He couldn't have. It's just outside of his kilter, his character of Banu Hashim. Otherwise, someone like Walid ibn Uqba or Marwan at that time would have said, well, your brother gave bay'ah to Muawiyah. Do you get what I mean? Like when Imam Hussein Islam said, I won't give bay'ah to him, someone could have said, your brother gave bay'ah to Muawiyah, but that indicates he didn't give bay'ah to Muawiyah. So it sheds light on many things. It sheds light on the fact that who was ultimately responsible, and that these people were out here to absolutely get their revenge. And when they were beating the bodies of, Imam Hussein, of Abbas, of Ali bin Hussein, Ali al-Akbar, they were saying, Umar ibn Sa'd, Hurmala, Shimr ibn Zuljosh. Shimr is the one who cut Imam Hussein Islam's head. They were saying to their armies, come and take revenge of what Ali did to us in Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Khaybar, our forefathers. So it goes to show there was deep hatred in these people. And we have to ask that disturbing question whether their modus operandi and whether they were deep inside Islamic in the first place or not, whether they accepted Islam to such an extent, if they went to the extent to cut the head of Rasulullah's grandson. But that's indeed a very disturbing chapter and beautifully explained, mashallah, as always.
No, exactly. I appreciate it because obviously I know Saeed is very well read about this as well. I think it's an interesting point you mentioned about the authenticity of their conversion. That was something we briefly touched upon. I think just in terms of how we view it is we don't really usually question. I mean, obviously, what's happened here is absolutely brutal. There is a debate which we just mentioned last week about Banu Umayya's sincerity towards a conversion towards Islam. There is a question about that which people put over it. That's not a debate I personally go into, just because I don't want to go into thing of questioning people's Islam. But I absolutely understand where that argument is coming from. And like Saeed actually beautifully put it, there are different versions of what's gone on and in terms of who's responsible and what kind of happened. The problem is it's such an emotionally charged event. There's so much going on. There's so much backstory to it. There's so many so many people who've got a stake in what's going on. That absolutely you can have different versions of it, and absolutely the one that I'm giving is not the one which everyone needs to agree with. So absolutely, I completely appreciate that. So if we just move on now in terms of the story from Hussein radiallahu anh, we then go on to now. I just wanted to put now what Ibn Khaldun said, just to spice it up maybe. So Ibn Khaldun said, okay, Al-Hussein's error has become clear. So this is the mainstream Sunni scholar, and I'm just letting you know, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with this. I'm just telling you what the another narrative is of what people would say. So Ibn Khaldun says, this is Ibn Khaldun, by the way, it's not me, okay, who's put this up in fancy kind of on Photoshop. This is Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah. He says, Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu's error has become clear. It was, however, an error with respect to a worldly matter, where an error does not do any harm. From the point of view of the religious law, he did not err, because here everything depended on what he thought, which was that he had the power to revolt against Yazid. Ibn Abbas, Ibn Zubayr, Ibn Umar, Hussein's brother Muhammad ibn Al-Hanafiyyah, and others criticized Al-Hussein because of his trip to Al-Kufa. They realized his mistake, but he did not desist from the enterprise he had begun. The men around Muhammad, other than Al-Hussein, in the Hijaz and with Yazid in Syria and in Iraq and their followers, were of the opinion that a revolt against Yazid, even though he was wicked, so even Ibn Khaldun is admitted to this, would not be permissible, because such a revolt would result in trouble and bloodshed. And so here I think is the crux of what Ibn Khaldun is summing up of what their opinions were, that no one's saying that Al-Hussein radiallahu anh is sinful. That's absolutely not an opinion, I think, in mainstream Sunni thought. Al-Hussein radiallahu anh was sinful. But this is the opinion of why someone like Abdullah bin Umar and Abdullah bin Abbas didn't revolt. Both of them knew that Hussein radiallahu anh was better than Yazid. That's something which no one can question, I think. I don't think anyone would seriously argue that Yazid was a better choice than Hussein radiallahu anh. Okay? But he's saying that this is why, this last paragraph, okay, is why Abdullah bin Umar and Abdullah bin Abbas didn't agree with what Al-Hussein was doing. Okay? And this is, I think, how Ibn Khaldun has summed it up. Sometimes people ask, I just wanted to finish up on this with Al-Hussein radiallahu anh. Because when I was teaching this in the madrasa which I teach, I was teaching this as well. And someone asked that, why did Al-Hussein radiallahu anh do it? Like, why did he go to Iraq with such few people? Why did he keep going even though he knew he would have been outnumbered? And I think it'd be interesting to see what Saeed says as well about this. I think personally as well, what played into it is I think he'd had enough. What I mean by that is that in 661, okay, he saw his father assassinated, Ali radiallahu anhu, assassinated by the Khawarij, right? I mean, how heartbreaking must that have been as well? To see as well his father struggle through those 5 years of his caliphate, yeah, struggle all the time. He tried to make a deal with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. The meeting went AWOL when Ali sent people to negotiate it. We didn't really talk about this, but this is what happened. It went AWOL, people kind of backstabbed him and didn't do what they should have done. So he saw his father get mentally tired. Okay. Then his son gives up the caliphate. Yeah, he gives it up and he gives and he agrees to join with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu in 661. Yeah. So Al-Hasan gives it up. Yeah. Then he's thinking, okay, you know what? Maybe things are okay now. I know my father's passed away and stuff, but you know what? It's going to come back to us. Right? It's going to come back to us. So that was the deal. But then in 671, he sees Hassan radiallahu anhu die. Pass away, yeah? Radiallahu anhu. And he's poisoned. And again, he's asking his brother, just tell me who did it. And we can deal with this. I'll deal with it. I'll avenge you. And his brother's just got that heart of gold where he doesn't want to hurt anyone else. And he says, no, I'm not going to tell it. And then he thinks to himself, okay, well, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is still alive. Okay. Maybe, we'll just see this out. Even though I've lost two of the closest people ever. And then he sees from 671 to 680, that Yazid gets kind of groomed for power. And he's told to give him the Pledge of Allegiance. He deals with it. He doesn't give the Pledge of Allegiance, but Muawiyah radiallahu anh doesn't really persecute him in that way. Run after him. And then when Muawiyah radiallahu anh passes away, he sees this guy come into power who you'll see later on in the narration, who no one really has a good opinion of. Anyone serious doesn't have a good opinion of. And I think, just to sum it up, is I think Hussein radiallahu anh kind of just had enough. what I mean by that is, and I'm not being controversial here anyway, is I can understand. I personally, I think to myself, I can understand why he did it. Yeah. And obviously, I'm not going to say that if I was in this position, would I be with him or like would I be against him? That's too difficult, I think, the question to answer. But I'm saying that we shouldn't ever for a second, I think, criticize. I think this is an English translation of Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah here, so I don't know how well the wording is here. Hussein's Array, if that's a good translation, I'll have to read the Arabic. But I would never say that Hussein radiallahu anhu made a mistake, because I think this is very powerful to say, and I would disagree with that. Okay? I understand why he did it. Okay? I understand why some people would say that he made a mistake. I get that. I understand what you're saying. Because people did die, a massacre happened. I understand. But I understand why he did it. Just try and empathize with him for a second. What happened to his father? What happened to his brother? What he had to see? Yeah. What I mean? So I understand why. And what I'm trying to say is we should have a bit more sympathy. Just have a lot of sympathy for Hussein radiallahu anhu. That this blessed man would have been a wonderful caliph. Yeah, I don't think anyone really can speak against that. He would have been a wonderful caliph. Yeah, because of the man he was, the people he was around. But unfortunately, realpolitik. Yeah, that's what I keep coming to refer to. Realpolitik. Things don't always work out like that. Do you have any comments, Saeed? Did you want to comment on anything which Ibn Khaldun said, or kind of what I said?
Oh, mashallah, you picked up on a great few points there, man. And it's such a big question to answer. What was Imam Hussein's motive in going to Karbala? And it's a great question. It's a deep question because so many historians, Muslims and non-Muslims, have commented on this, given their own input. Obviously, Ibn Khaldun, a big authority, you've quoted there. He's given his own take there. It's amazing. Because Imam Hussein knew as well. He knew as well he's going to be massacred. So why is he going with his children, his women? So it's literally a suicide, isn't it? And Abdullah ibn Umar warned him. Muhammad al-Hanafiya, his half brother, warned him. Yet, he took his people with him, and he knew what was happening. One great answer I've heard to this is actually from the lens of Imam Hussein himself. What was he thinking? He was saying, or this answer goes in the following. One explanation, shall we say, is that Imam Hussein wanted to expose this ummah and to highlight to the ummah who is with me, who is with the message of Islam, and who isn't. And if it takes my sacrifice, if it takes my looting, if it takes my head to be cut, so be it. And I will go down in history as the defender of Islam versus those who came against Islam. So that's the courage. That's what you call, the Muslim of Rasulullah. That's what you call the blood of Rasulullah. So that was the motive of Imam Hussein. He saw himself as a leader. Obviously, different schools of thoughts now will come and depict Imam Hussein as a different individual. Some will say he's just a politician. Some will say he's no doubt a spiritual leader. But ultimately, he was the defender of Islam in that environment where others were passive. And he said, you know what? If it takes me to be sacrificed, so be it. At least Islam will be saved. And that was a great explanation. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No, absolutely. And I think I would absolutely agree that is what no matter whether you're Sunni or Shia, everyone takes that from Hussein radiallahu anhu, that he was a man that's the message which we should take from what happened to him, to stand up against great authority. Yeah, when you maybe know that you may not even win, that takes courage, and that takes an ability and a piety which very few people have. We look at the people in Gaza. This is very synonymous. Okay? I just mentioned this in the last lesson, that the Umayyads are a representation for today. You can see what happens today. It will map onto the Umayyads. Okay, so it's worth studying people who were 1300 years ago. This is the same with Gaza. The people in Gaza know they can't defeat the Zionists, but they are there and showing me and you of what the reality is, of what it means to be a Muslim, what it means to stand firm in the face of oppression. SubhanAllah. Jazakallah for that, Sayyid. That was brilliant analysis. Okay, so I mean, people have asked that. Okay, so Yazid has dealt with, unfortunately, in a horrific and horrendous manner with Hussein radiallahu anhu. He's now, if we're just talking in terms of realpolitik, he's got away with one enemy, but he has one left, Abdullah ibn Zubayr in Medina. Sorry, in Mecca. Okay, right. Something interesting happens in Medina, though. Following the tragic events at Karbala, news of Al Hussein's assassination proliferated, grew all across the Arabian Peninsula, piercing through the nerve center of the Muslim world, Mecca and Medina. The people of Mecca, rallying around Abdullah ibn Zubayr, pledged their allegiance to him. So now you have two caliphs, okay? Abdullah ibn Zubayr in Mecca and Yazid in Damascus. The people of Al-Madinah elected representatives assigned with the mission of visiting Yazid in Damascus, where they were to pledge their oath of allegiance to him on behalf of Medina's inhabitants, thereby evading any reprisals and persecutions from his army. So the people of Medina started by saying, we're not going to join with Abdullah ibn Zubayr, we're going to give the pledge of allegiance to Yazid. Okay. The Medinan delegation, which was headed by Abdullah ibn Hanzala al-Ghasil and 8 of his sons, they were hosted with honor and generosity when they reached the residence of the Caliph Yazid, who accorded them many favors and treated them with consideration and respect. Abdullah ibn Hanzala received 100,000 silver dirhams from Yazid, while each of his sons was granted 10,000 silver dirhams, fine horses, and expensive garments. So they come, this delegation, headed by Abdullah ibn Hanzala, and they're treated very well by Yazid. Okay? Upon their arrival back to Al-Madinah, this group of delegates decided to renege on their oaths, severed all ties to Yazid and his administration. So this is what they say, taken from Ibn Khayyat's history. They came back to Medina and they said this: we have paid visit to Yazid, a man who drinks alcohol, indulges in licentious activity, means like immoral, and enjoys the company of songstresses, basically women who sing. Yazid drinks so much alcohol that he even neglects his prayer. O people of Medina, we disavow ourselves from him and his authority. We have only accepted these gifts from him so that we may use them to fight against his reign. Okay, so the people of Medina went to Damascus, accepted the caliphate, pledge of allegiance, didn't like what they saw, so they took what he gave to them, and they came back to Medina and they said, we don't want to accept this guy. After publicly reneging on their pledge to Muawiyah in regards to the Khilafah of his son Yazid, the people of Medina then replaced the Umayyad governor and appointed 3 of their own representatives to govern over them. The Ansar elected Abdullah ibn Hanzala al-Ghasil. So Abdullah ibn Hanzala was in charge of the Ansar, and Abdullah ibn Muawiyah al-Adawi was the leader of the Muhajirun. So in Medina now you have 2 leaders, okay? Abdullah ibn Hanzala and Abdullah ibn Muawiyah. Okay? So that's what happened in Medina. Okay, what does Yazid do? When news of this devastating and wholly unexpected developments reached Yazid, he grew incensed by the defiance and treacherous response of Medina's inhabitants. By Allah, I treated the delegation from Medina with honor and generosity. I did not expect this from them. Okay, so Yazid doesn't go for violence straight away. I know it's hard to try and give credit to a guy like him, but just give credit where credit's due. He doesn't go to violence here. Yazid dispatched his governor, Nu'man ibn Bashir, towards Medina and instructed him to reason with its people. Perhaps they may revert back to their oaths and renew their pledge to Yazid, thereby avoiding the need for war. So he actually gives them a chance. He sends Nu'man to them to say, come back to my pledge and I won't do anything. Nu'man ibn Bashir arrived in Medina and addressed its people, advising them to reconsider their decision and to return back to their original pledge, as it would safeguard them from Yazid and his mighty Syrian army. The people rebuffed his advice and rejected his proposals. They were ready for whatever Yazid had in store for them and would not relent or renege on their decision, not for Yazid. So they said no. Yeah, they said, we're not going to come back. Pardon me. When Nu'man ibn Bashir returned to Yazid in Damascus and conveyed to him what the people of Medina had said, the news overwhelmed Yazid and caught him completely off guard. Yazid thought, look, if I be diplomatic, they're going to come back. However, that's not what happened. Yazid then reassured his general, Muslim ibn Uqba, that if the people of Medina did not comply with his orders or surrender after a 3-day amnesty, they were to be utterly crushed and made an example of. During these 3 days, the Syrians camped outside Medina near a gate by the name of Tayba. So Yazid now sends an army. So let's just be fair to him. He sent diplomatic missions first. That didn't work. So he sends an army now. Okay. What happens is horrific. Okay. I just want, so they fight, just for brevity, because I want to do too much talking. So they fight, okay, and they absolutely annihilate Syrians. The Umayyad army annihilates the people of Medina. Well, let's start reading from here what happens. For the duration, this is to Medina to Munawwara, which happens here, okay? The city of the Messenger of Allah, he's buried there. For the duration of 3 entire days, the army of Muslim ibn Uqba proceeded to pillage, plunder, ravage, and rape their way through Al-Madinah, which was still home to senior companions of the Prophet ﷺ, their children and grandchildren. Abdullah ibn Hanzala, the governor appointed over the Ansar, was killed, and his 8 sons were killed. According to historical accounts from the Caliph ibn Muawiyah, 306 men from the Ansar and those belonging to the Quraysh were put to the sword. It's called the Battle of Harra, which is where this happened. It was also reported that approximately 1,000 unwed women in Medina later fell pregnant and delivered babies months after the army had left the city, as a result of the gross and systematic ravishment of the womenfolk present in Medina during the Battle of Harra. This happened Muslim on Muslim. This was not non-Muslim on Muslim. Muslims did this to the Muslims of Medina. Okay? Ibn Uqba was completely without restraint and did not care for the emotional appeals of mothers whose children were seized and beheaded right in front of them, after which the severed head would be presented to the mother. Animals were killed and property was demolished. None of the soldiers of Ibn Uqba were to be held accountable for anything they did in Medina. Yazid did not do anything. So when I was teaching this at one point, some of the students were saying, okay, what did Yazid do now? Because obviously this is going too far, right? Yazid didn't want this to happen. This is what they were just trying to think, right? Like, Yazid obviously didn't want this to happen. He does absolutely nothing. Okay? Absolutely nothing. Okay? And this is not like a Shia source or a non-Muslim source or a Khawarij source. This is through the books of Tariq of history. This is from the Caliph ibn Muawiyah, a mainstream Sunni scholar. They pillaged, plundered, ravaged, and raped the city of Medina. Yeah. Okay, this is the last bit, and I'll just let you know if you want to jump in by all means. So, in the midst of this horrendous assault on the sanctified city of Medina, Muslim ibn Uqba set up a temporary court in the city and began to summon the notable and leading individuals to him one by one. The first to be summoned before Muslim was Ali ibn al-Hussein Zain al-Abidin. So, this was the son of al-Hussein radiallahu anhu, and he was also here. It says he survived the massacre of Karbala. Okay, so he was there at Karbala as well. But he survived. He was allowed to return back. He survived. When he arrived, accompanied by, he's back again. Yeah, accompanied by Marwan ibn Al-Hakam and his son Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, both of whom were Umayyad notables serving as Ali's bodyguards. Muslim ibn Uqba made it known under no uncertain terms that if it were not for Yazid, I would have beheaded you. Okay? Ali ibn Hussein was then dismissed and sent back to his residence. Next, Muslim ibn Uqba summoned Amr, the son of Uthman ibn Affan, third Caliph, and a prominent member of the Umayyad clan, who had been assassinated in Medina only a few years prior. A Muslim addressed Amr with an air of disdain and disregard. When you are among the people of Medina, you express your loyalty towards them. Yet when you are with us in Damascus, you express your loyalty to Banu Umayyah by reminding us that Uthman ibn Affan is your father. So basically saying to Amr that, you just change as the wind changes. And Amr was then subjected to the humiliating ordeal of having his beard plucked out in front of the assembly. That's quite painful, as you can imagine, for anyone who has a beard. What I mean. So that's what happened in it's called the Horrors of Harra, but this is what happened to the people of Medina. Does anyone want to mention anything about that? Any kind of thoughts or anything like that? It's a very disturbing time. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're okay. We should finish on time. Okay, I'll keep going. So people don't know about this. A lot of people know about Karbala because it's very, very infamous. But people don't know what happened to Medina. This happened to Medina. Yeah? The city where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is buried, this was going on next to it. Okay, so I want you just now, just coming towards it's coming slightly towards the end, that this is what happened. If you remember the original people we had in the picture, so Sa'id ibn Uthman, he joined Banu Umayyah. So he joined them. He realized that they were going to force people to do things. He went with the wind. He joined them. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh passes away. He died in 59 AH. Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr died as well, passed away. Abdullah ibn Hanzala was assassinated. Yeah, sorry, not assassinated, killed in battle. Hussein ibn Ali was martyred at Karbala. Abdullah ibn Zubair has gone to Mecca. Yeah, he's gone to Mecca. So he's not there anymore. Okay, and so only 4 of the original 10 are there. Yeah, these guys, what do they all have in common? Yeah, does anyone want to put it in the chat or anything? What do these guys all have in common? Anyone want to take a guess? Another guess? What do these guys all have in common? Sahaba, no, actually, that's a good guess. It's not actually, because Abdul Malik ibn Marwan is not a Sahaba. What I'm trying to get at, so it's a good guess, that's a lot. What I'm trying to get at is they are all people who gave the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, these 4. So we can talk about what's right and what's wrong. Okay? We can have that discussion. But the people who survived are doing green. So the people who survived were all the people who gave the Pledge of Allegiance. Just bear in mind that, please. And so anyone who resisted, yeah, got massacred. We'll come to Abdullah ibn Zubair another day. Okay? Some people who resisted then relented, and so they got promoted, like Sa'id ibn Uthman. People who gave the Pledge of Allegiance first, but then reneged on their deal, were massacred as well. And the only people who were left alone were the people who pledged allegiance. Yeah? I just wanted to show the reality of what happens when you go up against authority. Okay? Yeah. I think it's quite interesting. I know I didn't want to get too controversial, but we have to try and learn from history, right? So when you look at what's happening in Palestine and Gaza now, okay, there's a very famous fatwa actually from someone called Sheikh Albani. He was a scholar in Saudi Arabia. He's passed away now, I think 20, 30 years ago he passed away. He said the people of Palestine, one of the solutions is for them to make hijrah. Okay? Is for them to leave Palestine and go into the Arab lands, and we should cater for them and care for them and give them money and give them houses and things like that. We should allow them into our systems. If you say that before October 7th, you're seen as a traitor. You will be really cancelled in the Muslim community. In fact, that happened to one person. I don't want to get into like the discussion about him. He's called Abu Layth. Right? He said that 2 years ago, in 2021, I remember, and someone broke into his house. Right? He had this idea which Sheikh Albani had as well. I want you to all think, right? And if you want to interrupt me and talk about it, you can. That I think if you look at what's happened now, the 7th of October, yeah, I think a lot of people would bite your hand off for Hijrah now. Because over 30,000 people have been killed. I think we would all go back and say, yeah, let's give them Hijrah. Let's take them out. Feel free to disagree with me if you want. You can come on to chat and stuff like that and disagree with me. That's absolutely fine. I'm more than willing to listen. But I don't think 30,000 people dying is a good enough price. Is worth the price of saying, oh, look at the hypocrisy of the Western world. We don't need 30,000 people dying to show that. Look at how here Abdullah bin Umar and Abdullah bin Abbas knew. I mean, no one's obviously prophetic apart from the prophets, but they thought that this is what was going to happen. the massacre at Karbala, the massacre at Harra and Medina. That's what they thought was going to happen. And in that sense, they were proved right. That is what happened. Massacre of a massacre. We can go into a different debate whether it was worth it or not. But one thing I think you need to respect about these two men, other than the fact that they're the two very, very, very senior companions, other than that, you need to respect the fact that they were wise people, that they knew what they were talking about. Whether you agree or disagree with what they did by pledging allegiance. And you can see it today in the world. That personally, for myself, if someone says go back to 6th of October and Israel lets out all of the Palestinians who want to go from Gaza and the West Bank, or let's just talk about Gaza, lets everyone from Gaza leave into Egypt or Jordan and will pay for their travel, I mean, I would bite their hand off and beg them to go back to that scenario. Anyone disagree? Anyone want to comment on that? Because this for me is history. This is what history is about. It's about learning about things like this and applying it into the modern day. It's an unpopular opinion. I can get that. It's unpopular. People don't like this. If you would speak now and say we've made a mistake, it's not been worth it. I don't understand how people are saying that 30,000 lives is worth it to prove the Western hypocrisy. With the greatest respect, I knew that before 7th of October.
May I jump in, Brother Yahya?
Yeah. Go jump in.
Yeah, mashallah, great reference to Gaza as well, and I hope people in Gaza see with the grace of Allah some sort of peace and safety. But I would relate it in the way that the massacre of Gaza right now going on, the absolute massacre, it wasn't necessarily about exposing Western hypocrisy. We knew about Western hypocrisy, as you mentioned. We knew Western countries and powers were involved in the creation of this Zionist state, obviously. This massacre, the sacrifice of the 30,000 and plus souls whom will inshallah go to Jannah and enjoy safety and peace and comfort there, it's exposed the so-called Muslim Ummah. The way, like we discussed before, the way Hussein's sacrifice exposed the Ummah who was with him, i.e. Islam, and who wasn't. I'd say this has exposed the Muslim Ummah. If you have a look, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, oh my God, Jordan defended Israel from the the missiles or the drones that were coming over. Yeah. So the sacrifice of this great nation of Gaza hasn't necessarily, well, it has, of course, exposed the Western hypocrisy. Don't get me wrong. Of course it has, yeah. But more than that, just akin to like the way Hussein sacrificed himself to expose who was with him and who wasn't, and who was with Islam, who wasn't, it's exposed the many so-called Muslim nations, Muslim leaders who are in face or in actuality with the cause of Palestine. And I'm not saying let's have everyone sacrificed in Gaza. No, not at all. But obviously, to ascertain freedom, to ascertain nationhood and, your own identity, you've got to make a sacrifice. There's no, achievement without hard work and sacrifice and blood and sweat. Rasulullah is the greatest example, obviously. But I would say it's exposed more, their sacrifice has exposed more of these so-called Muslim nations whom are so indebted to the Western nations that they can't dare to speak up against Israel. And if they do, they have to somehow, put honey around their words.
Yeah.
So it's actually the other way around. It's a bit like I'm saying, you've drawn a very good example, a parallel here. But it's actually exposed us, the so-called Muslim Ummah, who were in support of actually Israel, the Zionist state. Saudi Arabia, I'll quickly finish it, has banned protests in the name of Palestine. The reason why they banned it is so that the public doesn't start questioning Saudi Arabia. Then what the hell are you doing in support of Palestine? Yeah. So
let me say to you though, it's like
that
the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ's life, when it's got tough, he made the hijrah, right? Makkah to Medina, because things get too intolerable in Makkah. And I suppose that is the point that I'm trying to come with. That the Prophet ﷺ didn't stay in Mecca and say, let's get slaughtered to the last man. I think what I'm trying to say why maybe Gaza is different from Hussein radiallahu anhu, why it's more akin to the Prophet ﷺ, is because Hussein radiallahu anhu obviously made that decision for himself. What it feels like is that we're trying to make decisions for other people and say, yeah, Gaza should be slaughtered and sacrificed for us to prove something, whatever that proving is, Western hypocrisy, the hypocrisy of that. And I think that's what I'm uncomfortable with. I'm saying, like, I'm sure if you ask some of those people in Gaza, they would take the hijrah before the 6th of October now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It doesn't mean that we stop fighting, or the Ghazans should stop fighting for their land and just be constantly sacrificed. What I would disagree with Allama Al-Albani would be to be a bit more brave and actually call out the hypocrisy of the Muslim Ummah in not supporting. Start there. Charity begins at home. Rather than giving these futile offers, oh, let's share. That's exactly what the Palestinians were offered in the 1930s and 40s. Oh, let's share land, dear Palestinians, with us Zionists and you guys here. Palestinians said, no, we're not going to share. It's our land. So before we even get to that offer, it's prudent that the likes of Allama Al-Albani and others muster some strength to actually criticize those whom have allowed us to come to this situation where we have to negotiate our haqq. Palestinians have to negotiate their haqq, Allah. They have to, it's their land. They were born in that land. Do you get what I mean, bro? So before they even get, So, yeah.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with you on the calling out Muslims. Absolutely. And it has exposed it. Absolutely. So I'll just quickly try and get to the rest of this, because I know I don't want to keep people. We've got 5 minutes left. So I just want to, but exactly for the discussion, that was fascinating. Just finishing up Yazid. So the reason why you can't really defend his actions, or I think say that, okay, I mean, we're not going to try and defend Karbala, absolutely, but you can't even defend Medina, saying that they went overboard without him, because number one, there was no reprisals for that army of what they did in Medina. And number two, he then sends his army in Medina, could you believe this, to go and besiege Makkah al-Mukarramah. So he sends his army and says, go and besiege Makkah and go and kill Abdullah ibn Zubayr. However, curveball occurs. Okay? While his army in 683 AD is besieging the Kaaba and throwing catapults into the city, Yazid dies. Okay? And in 683 AD, quite suddenly, people say it was an illness. There's not really an idea of poisoning. It's just from an illness, I think, he catches. That's the mainstream thought. He dies. And when he dies, I'm just going to go on to the next slide. So when he dies, he's got this family tree again. His son takes over, Muawiyah II. So that's his son, okay, Muawiyah ibn Yazid. But Muawiyah ibn Yazid is very sickly. Okay, so he's like in his, I think he's about 20 or something, so he's a bit young. And he's very sickly though. And he dies after 6 months of coming into power, Muawiyah II. What's very interesting is about Muawiyah II though, is that he actually wanted it to go back to how the Khulafa al-Rashidun did it. He'd probably just been so disgusted with what had gone on with Yazid and how dirty the politics had been. He just wanted to go back to the Khulafa al-Rashidun. So he said that, I'm dying. I want the Muslim Ummah to choose the person after me. Okay? That's what Muawiyah II does. So he dies in 683 AD. And we're not going to go into it because it's not our remit, and I know we're coming to the end as well, is after 683, when Muawiyah II dies, this line is done for, and it goes to, guess who? Marwan ibn Al-Hakam. He becomes the next caliph. And he doesn't have an easy ride. He has to go through a very lot of difficulty. But the point I want to bring you to is that, I just get rid of the pen, this side of the Umayyads is done for, the Sufyanids. So Abu Sufyan's here. His 3 descendants, Muawiyah, Yazid, Muawiyah, are done for. They don't get the Khilafah back in their line. Marwan gets it after Muawiyah II. All the Ummayyad Caliphs, basically, with a 1, 2, yeah. sorry, all of the Umayyad Caliphs after that all come from Marwan. So that's why the rule now of the Marwanid starts after 683, all the way to 750, when the Umayyads collapse. They are all now come from Marwan, so they're called the Marwanids. So we have the Sufyanids here, which is what this was all about, Sufyanids, and they are finished in 683, and Marwan takes the power. The reason why it finishes from the Sufyanids is because, to go back to show you, Yazid had Muawiyah as a son who could rule. He had another son as well, but they were all too young. He had another son called Khalid as well, but he was too young to rule. So that's why Marwan gets it after him. Okay, so that's why. So that's why the Sufyanids comes to an end. So that is the end then of the Sufyanids. So as you can see, the story is not finished. Okay, some of you may be thinking this is a two-part series to tell you about the Sufyanids, and it's a kind of, here's the beginning of the story and the story is ending. It's definitely not ended, because there's going to be reprisals. But one is there's going to be issues with the succession. Succession is not guaranteed. There's a fallout from Karbala. There's still Karbala to deal with and what happened after that. And the people of Iraq. There's still Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr in Mecca. Okay? So please don't think that the Sufyanids dying is the end of problems, and now the Marwanids is a wonderful time of Umayyad period of history. It absolutely is not. So this is the reason why I didn't want to do the whole of the Umayyads in two parts, because you simply can't. Okay? There's too much which goes on, so much to talk about, and it just keeps on getting interesting, by the way. So absolutely, you should keep going in your reading. So I'm going to leave it there. I've just got a few more slides in terms of reading. These will all be sent out, so you guys can, if you've signed up through Ilm Seeker Academy, I'll send the PowerPoint to Monna Musa, and he can send this to you. These are all primary sources in English just to read about it. And these are some further reading as well, which you can do. These are books which you can read, just for political kind of thought, things like that. So if there's any questions, I can hang on for like 5-10 minutes if anyone has any questions. If Saeed, you wanted to say anything, absolutely, by all means, bro, just let me know.
MashaAllah, beautiful lecture series, Yahya. This is the first time I've attended, and it's like, I'm listening to a professor. Honestly, I'm not saying it because we know each other, and you're, mashallah, a very good friend of mine. Very well thought out, very well presented, and it's like a chronological, event, or events that you're taking us through, which is how a historical lecture should be. And that's been amazingly presented, very enlightening, very knowledgeable, and mashallah, I've learned a lot. And I'm sure others have thoroughly enjoyed it as well. Great series, and inshallah, everything. The next parts that you decide to do, I'm sure they will be fantastic as well. MashaAllah, fantastic. Thank you so much once again.
No, absolutely. I just want to say also thank you to everyone who's participated, and especially Jazakallah for you, Saeed, for like engaging. And honestly, I learned a lot from you as well. That was really, really good discussions. And mashallah, Saeed is very knowledgeable as well about history. He could easily be up here doing it as well. So I really appreciate your time. So I will let everyone go then, inshallah. Jazakallah for your time.